for the day, Phillipa Perry.
Hi there! Good to see you. Can I have my first slide, please? Thank you. I'm here today to talk to you about small talk. Anybody from Hackney here? Oh, anybody not from Hackney here? Oh, hello, and where have you come from today?
I'm from Northwest London.
Northwest London, fantastic. Isn't it a beautiful day today? It's lovely, isn't it? Do you all agree with me? Yeah. Good. Lovely. Small talk. We need small talk. And I need another slide. Can you see that? That is a slide of the British Library, and I spent about 6 months there doing a bit of reading. And while I was there, I had 3 distinct separate hairstyles. I had a short mousy bob. I went a bit radical and I shaved my head at one point. That didn't really work for me, so then I got a long blonde wig. And it was my 3 hairstyles that really got me thinking about small talk. Because when I had the mousy bob and I went for my cup of tea every day, I didn't really notice who was talking to me or who wasn't talking to me. But when I had the crew cut, I noticed the academics that came to ask me what the time was or to ask me what I thought of the air conditioning today seemed to be of sort of a bit of a... Well, they seemed to have very short hair and big boots, and they were all women. And I hadn't noticed that before. And then when I got my long blonde wig, all the people that wanted to know what the time was or what I thought of the air conditioning, they were all blokes. So then I thought, perhaps it isn't about the time or the air conditioning at all. Perhaps these tiny little questions that people ask me are about something else. Slide. Perhaps they're taking some sort of temperature. Slide. Now, can you make the slide a bit smaller so we can actually see it? What this is this is what we're doing when we're asking about the air conditioning. When we're saying it's gorgeous for the time of year, what we're doing is we're taking the temperature, we're seeing whether you're friendly, we're telling you I'm friendly, and we're also assessing other things we might want to know, such as how do we want to know this person? And how we're getting the information is through lots of bodily cues, through our mirror neurons all firing off together. And actually what we're saying is not the point. It's not the content of what we say when we do small talk, it's the process. And the process is much the same as these 2 dogs. The process is you're sniffing each other out. Now this is the sign for the next slide when I sort of go like that. Oh, hello. Now you've got a slide of monkeys grouping. The other thing that small talk is for is once you've established contact, to stay in contact. I know we'd all like to say something that would astound the whole room with its brilliance and originality, but that's not what contact is about. Contact is about staying close to someone, being with someone, and using small talk is a ritualized way that we do it, just like monkeys might pick each other's ticks out. We say things like, "Hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are the kids?" It's just a way of, once we've established contact with the sniffing bottom bit, we keep in contact. Slide. So, the weather. Are we really that interested in isobars, low pressure, high pressure? I wonder, because we do talk about the weather a lot. This is Dr. Johnson, and he said, when two Englishmen meet, their first talk is about the weather. And, slide. This chap, this is Bill Bryson, he's an American, and he wrote Notes of us on a Small Island, American talking about us. I mean, how very dare they? But anyway, he said, this is because we're eccentric, that's why we talk about the weather, because he reckoned our weather was not interesting enough to talk about. Slide. Jeremy Paxman took issue with this, and he said, it's very subtlety and uncertainty that makes it interesting. But, slide. Kate Fox, in her book Watching the English, said, when we talk about the weather, we are not talking about the weather at all. That is not the point of it. What we're actually doing is when we say something like, isn't it cold out there? Is we're saying, this is a question, and I want you to agree with me, because I'm assessing how agreeable you are. And when we say, yes, it's freezing, we're saying, I'm friendly, he's friendly, I'm going to agree with you, we're going to get on, I'm not a threat. And I put it in thought bubbles here, but actually, it's more of a felt thing. We're thinking in the words, but we're feeling the stuff I put in bubbles. We're feeling the friendliness, the non-threateningness. Next slide. Now, there's another way of doing it. We might say the same thing, like, great weather, or whatever it is. And if we say, it's too hot for me, what we're saying is, I'll have contact with you, but don't expect any confluence. Don't expect me to necessarily agree with you on everything. So you'll put a bit on your guard. You're going, oh, not as friendly then. But, maybe you're up for that. Maybe you're up for a bit of banter or whatever it is. So you're getting a different message when someone doesn't agree with you with your initial question. Next slide. Now, you're in real trouble if you make the weather greeting, hi, isn't it great weather? And somebody doesn't even answer. Might hands here a bit of an enemy. So, you've been warned. This is what weather talk is about. This is what weather talk is about. I think I might ditch the mic altogether. Anyway. It works if I'm over here. Sorry, you lot. Next slide, please. My friend, who's German, when I told her I was doing this TED talk, said, we don't do small talk in Germany. I said, that's impossible. What do you mean you don't do small talk in Germany? How do you have a party, for God's sake? She said, oh, we had a party the other day. I invited my colleagues, and my husband invited his colleagues. And we both love our colleagues, so we thought it'd be a great party. But actually, the two groups didn't mix at all. I thought, oh dear. But this is what it's for. It's for the initial contact. So we can mix, so we can make that first contact. Next slide, please. Now, it's for more than contact. Small talk is when what you're saying isn't really what you're saying. It's a vehicle through which you're saying something else. Here's a picture of my dad. Now, there are certain rules in small talk. So when you say, how are you? The only answer that you're allowed to give in small talk is, fine, thank you, which is a little bit restricting when you're not. So I asked my dad, who's well versed in all the rules of etiquette, how are you, Dad? And he goes, oh, I'm fine, I'm absolutely fine. So I'm not really getting the truth, so I have to try a bit harder. Then I say, How's the dog? Oh, the dog's really depressed. Oh dear, why is the dog depressed, Dad? Well, since I can't drive anymore, the dog doesn't get out enough. Oh, so do you want me to take the dog out? No, wrong. So I go, would the dog feel better if I took you and the dog out in the car and we went to the pub? Yes, I think the dog would enjoy that. We have certain conventions where big alpha males aren't used to expressing their vulnerability. And unless we are going to get depressed, we all have to share on a deep, authentic level, which means sharing our vulnerability. Through talking through his dog, my father has found a way that's acceptable to him of sharing on a deeper level. And he's done it through the medium of what I call small talk, by talking about his dog, for instance. So small talk isn't always frivolous. Next slide, please. And often we talk through the medium of football. Now, when we're chatting about what team do you support and stuff like that, it sounds like small talk. It sounds very light, but it might not be. I've got a friend, Valdemar, he's called, and he was telling me the other day how very sad he was that Reading Football Club had been beaten by Yeovil. He was so sad. He said, why do I feel this terrible pain when we're defeated by Yeovil? And I said, well, if you didn't feel the pain of defeat, how would you ever feel the euphoria of winning? But this didn't hit the nail on the head for him. He sort of stayed despondent. It didn't cheer him up. So I obviously hadn't got it right. So I tried again. And I said, what is it about Yeovil that you hate so much? And his features twisted in hate. And he said, they wear very sickly colours. And I picked up on this word sickly. And I said, is it that when Reading win and they beat Yeovil, it's almost like you've beaten death? Because we're all going to die, and it's a very depressing thought to think we might have to leave this party that is life. And maybe if you think of Yeovil as death, when you beat Yeovil, you temporarily conquer death, hence the euphoria. He didn't necessarily agree with me, but he nodded and cheered up a bit. So we can even talk about existential subjects like the fact we're all going to die. They're a little bit difficult to tackle through the medium of football or small talk. Next slide, please. Now, why do we disparage small talk so much? Why has it got such a bad reputation? I mean, even the name, small talk, I mean, that's very pejorative, isn't it? Small. Next slide, please. This is Eric Byrne. He is a psychotherapist. He invented transactional analysis. And he said, I can't read it actually because the slide isn't very good. Here we go. He said, pastimes and games are substitutes for the real living of real intimacy. Oh, Eric, you've got it so wrong. Pastimes and games are what we do when we're staying next to each other and near to each other, because we do need to remain in contact, and we can't be deep and meaningful all of the time. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of a cup of coffee and a brownie. Now, I went to a counselling course once, and we were very much following the Eric Byrne principles that we had to really speak from here all the time. We weren't allowed to talk through the medium of football or the dog. We weren't allowed just to talk about the weather. We had to talk about what we were really feeling at the time we were feeling it. And we did a lot of good, authentic sharing on that course that made us feel more connected with each other. It's all very nice and very good. And a lot of tissues were used in the sessions. And after one session, which was particularly grueling, I said to people in the break, "Does anybody fancy a coffee?" And they all looked at me. "Oh no, that's not what you're supposed to do." "What do you really mean, Phillipa?" they said. "Come on, you can't just say, ask us a question. What's happening for you?" So I had to think very carefully, and I said, "I want a coffee, and I want you to come with me." They liked that. So we all had a nice coffee, and they said, "That was good when you said it like that, because you owned your vulnerability and your need for wanting something." Anyway, I was with these people for about a year, and whenever I fancied a coffee, I said, "I want a coffee, and I want you to come with me." But after about a year, saying, "I want a coffee and I want you to come with me," had about as much meaning as, "Does anybody fancy a coffee?" You can't keep it up. You can't keep this deep, deep stuff up all the time. But we do need to be in contact with each other. That's why we need small talk and ritualized saying like, "Does anybody fancy a?" Because all the time is very hard to keep up. We just can't do it. Next slide, please. These are the chaps from Top Gear. Top Gear is a television program where three men choose three near identical vehicles and argue the toss between them. What they are doing, in fact, is not talking about cars at all. They're playing a game that's played throughout the land in every pub called Mine's Bigger Than Yours. And it's very civilized to do it through the medium of cars. It is better than throwing spears. Small talk is a symbol of a very civilized, small talk and rituals is a symbol of a very civilized society, because we're playing the games in these very restricted, rule-bound ways and not killing each other. That has to be a good thing, right? I think it's a good thing. And people enjoy it. It's a game. So Eric Byrne, to you. So the Top Gear game, Mine's Bigger Than Yours, much beloved by men. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of two ladies and a baby. And what ladies play quite often, I mean men play it too, is Mine's Smaller Than Yours. So lady one is saying, "Oh, what a beautiful pregnancy bump you've got." And lady two says, "Oh yes, but you've got a real baby." And then they say, "Oh, I love your cardigan. Oh, this old thing, I got it from a charity shop 10 years ago. Your hair's nice. Oh, When I'm playing this game, after a while, I just lose. I go, "Thanks." But it's the same thing. It's like, I'm friendlier, you're friendly, and they're playing who's the best at being modest. I always lose that. I'm great, I know it. So there's lots of these games, and I think subsequent speakers might go into them in a bit more detail. Next slide, please. Right, so how do you do small talk? Anybody here find it hard to do small talk? No, you're all brilliant at it. Oh no, one or two do find it hard to do small talk. The thing to remember is what you need is a common denominator, something you've both got in common. And that's quite often weather. So remember, it's not the content of what you say that matters, it's what's in your heart that matters. So you're really making contact with someone when you're asking them a question, you want to know about them. What do you think of this weather we're having? Don't worry about not being original. The point of small talk is not to be original, it's to make contact. And you might come through the common denominator, the weather, you might find something that you find even more interesting, like the weather. For instance, "Do you want to have sex with me?" is quite good, but you can't launch in with that. You've got to start with something else first. And another one that's good is a compliment. You can always give someone a compliment and start playing the mine's smaller than yours game. That's always a good one. Or if you're very confident, you can play the mine's bigger than yours game. So there's always something to do. Next slide, please. A single neuron in your head, a brain cell, is no good on its own. It needs another brain cell to make contact with. It's the same for a human brain. One brain on its own is no good. We need other brains to interact with and to grow. We are pack animals. So, this is supposed to get a new slide. Can we turn the lights down so you can see this, please? The next time you go to a bus stop, keep your smartphone in your pocket, go to the woman at the bus stop and say, "Been waiting long?" Thanks very much.